trust anybody now.
Come on, you hey! You want to live forever?
Now what?
But no matter what happens, Godzilla will win.
Babe, you gotta take a picture with this.
Just be quick.
Hey.
Good afternoon, lunchtime, my classmates.
Hi, Radu.
All available units. We have a 19243, a dead whale washed up with a nasty slice in its belly.
Oh, sure as hell wasn't no shark down there.
Yeah, I'm guessing not.
Something's out there. That's for damn sure.
Mister, you alright? Yes.
Reports are coming in from fishermen all along the coast.
What are these things? Some unknown species of crabs.
I've never seen a 6-foot tall crab.
We need to call the army.
And tell them what? That we're being attacked by man-eating crabs?
We have to stop them.
So these perfectly adapted animals are now supercharged.
And what can stop something so jacked up?
Another perfectly evolved predator.
Let's do this.
And welcome back to the Monster Movie Stompdown. Of course, you got your host, Sludge, here, the master from Texas.
Ruben.
And our special guest, Mr. Charlie Chase from Give Me Back My Action Movies and Give Me Back My Horror Movies. Charlie, say, hey, what's up?
What's up, everyone?
So we have got a special episode for you in which you'll hear us say this again in a little bit. Of course, Mark couldn't be here because he's fighting the, terrible pizza industry. So Charlie's filling in because we felt RoboCop was a better person to be here at the moment.
Yes, RoboCop.
And we've got something special for you guys. We came across a movie thanks to Pete Quint from Good Beer Bad Movie Night. Showed us a trailer for a movie called Crabs. And you guys have probably seen us post this on all of our socials over the last couple months. We had the opportunity to do an interview with Pierce Berolzheimer, the director of this film, and I apologize, Pierce, I probably still butchered her name just then, about this movie Crabs, and we got to watch it, got to see a screener of this film, very thankful for that, and we wanted to review it because this movie is absolutely amazing. We're big on pushing independent creators and their efforts, and this guy knocked it out of the park with this film. I think you guys can agree with that, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yes, sir.
It's not even up for question. Once you see this movie and you like these kind of movies, this is it for you. This is the cherry on top.
Yeah. If you're a regular listener to our show, any of our shows, just about.
Oh, yeah.
This is right up your alley.
Yeah, so definitely we want you guys to keep an eye out for this film. We're going to be sharing it. I mean, tons of stuff about this movie, but let's run into it real quick. Of course, this is a movie that's still running at some of the film circuits. They are going to be releasing this pretty soon in the U.S. It is currently available in Australia, and I know he said somewhere else. France.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he's working on distribution, hopefully in July for America and some other places. And, of course, he'll go into more detail on that in the interview. But before we jump into the interview, which was absolutely awesome, I had an absolute blast doing this interview with him. I think we all did. I mean, he was just such a cool dude to talk to.
Yeah.
But before we do that, we're going to give you guys a quick rundown review of what we thought of this movie. Simple movie, man. This movie, first and foremost, is a throwback to every 80s monster movie you can think of. Late 70s, all 80s, maybe some early 90s. This is just a love letter to those type of movies. And it's pretty simplistic. You got a horde of murderous crabs that are mutated because of a nuclear runoff from a nuclear facility that explodes at the beginning of the film. They mutate, attack a small town, and it's up to our main characters to save the day. And, of course, we've got Philip, who is a wheelchair-bound a high school student, his best friend, Maddie. Then, of course, you've got Annalise, who's Maddie's mother, is also the science teacher. Hunter, Philip's brother, who is one of the cops in town. You've also got Sheriff Flanagan, who's played by the great Robert Craighead. A great cast in this movie, and it's all up to them, just ragtag team to try and stop these crabs. And it goes from little tiny horseshoe crabs to 8-foot tall monster crabs to an awesome, epic kaiju-sized fight at the end. It goes from everything you can think of, it's thrown in the movie. So, homages to humanoids from the deep, gremlins, Power Rangers. If you love all that stuff as a kid, this movie is going to be right up your alley. I talked a lot, haven't been feeling too good. I want you guys to take it off first. Who wants to go first? What they thought of the movie?
Go for it, Charlie.
What I thought of this movie, absolutely fantastic. I was glued to the screen the second it started. It starts out pretty wild, but you just know what you're in for the rest of it. Ooey Gooey doesn't explain it. It doesn't give it enough credit for how well they did this movie. The throwbacks to, and as Sludge talked about, the critters, gremlins, ghoulies, all those type of movies are thrown in. The Power Rangers, the guys in monster suits that we grew up with watching. This movie gave it all. It has a timeless feel because it's set in an era that we all have a lot of nostalgia for, and you can tell that they had a lot of love for that time, and it comes through in this movie. And you can tell this is a very passion-driven project for Pierce. Especially Absolutely. You'll hear it in the interview that he loves this movie. And we do too. He nailed it as far as we're concerned. And yes, I'm speaking for them too right now because we've already all been gushing about it enough that it gives you everything you want. It's nonstop action. There's no long, drawn out parts of the movie. You are engaged with the actors. You care about the characters. Creatures are phenomenal. The sets are phenomenal. The special effects are phenomenal. Do yourself a favor when this movie comes out. Buy it. I'm not saying watch it. I'm saying buy it.
Absolutely.
Own this movie.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Ruben, what about you?
Oh, I absolutely love this movie. I threw it in and started watching it, and it got me from the very beginning because it's nostalgia driven, like Charlie says, and those of you that listen to the show know that I'm big on nostalgia. This movie was made. Sludge alluded to it earlier. It's a love letter to 80s horror and monster movies. I mean, it's made so well. And I mentioned on the show that we recorded earlier last month, I guess, after this is released, what Godzilla King of the Monsters was as a love letter to the Showa era and the 60s and 70s Godzilla films. That's what this is to 80s horror and monsters.
Yep.
There's plenty of whatever if you want to call them an Easter egg or you want to call them just kind of like an homage to 80s movie. It's all there. It's all there. Even some 90s. There's Jurassic Park references.
Yep.
In this movie, the humanoids from the deep. Humanoids from the deep was, I would call it a cult classic because there's a lot of people never heard about it. I mean, all of us have.
Oh yeah.
And I grew up watching. I mean, Humanoids from the Deep was on pay channel, on HBO or Cinemax or whatever it was back in the day, all the time. And this has Humanoids from the Deep element to it, which really that's one of my favorite movies growing up. So this had it all. The effects are great on this. I think he did a great job, or they did a great job of just putting in just enough of everything to keep every bit of the audience invested in the story, I guess. Because it's a monster movie and it's 80s, and we all know what the 80s monster movies and horror movies were like. But the way they did it and the way they structured it makes it very engaging. You're in it from the beginning to the very end. You're not lulled. You're not bored at any time during this movie at all. At least I wasn't, and I think both of y'all can agree with that. I wasn't bored at all. I was in it. It was interesting. It was silly. It was everything an 80s horror / monster movie is that you can remember, or maybe you're new to the genre, and it's everything. If you like any of that stuff, then you're gonna love this one. And it's made, this year. I mean, in the interview you'll find out, how long they worked on this and toiled on this, and it's obvious. The finished product is very obvious that they cared about this movie when they made it.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, this movie, and of course, with us doing the movies we do, got to give us a disclaimer. There is nudity in this one. There's some language in this one. But aside from that, this movie, I was hooked. I mean, from the word go, from the opening scene to where I was like, I'm watching Humanoids from the Deep again, to the throwback scenes or the homage scenes to Gremlins with the bar scene, which was just, just a bloodier version of what we got in Gremlins, and it was absolutely great. To, Ghoulies. Charlie, during the interview, you mentioned Ghoulies. There's scenes in this that reminded me of Munchies. There's stuff in this that reminds you of John Hughes flicks. I think Pierce even brings that up in the episode.
I didn't even think about it, but there's even, the crabs. Let's just say there's an alien. There's an alien.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't think about it till now, even though it's so obvious. It's just one of those things that's so obvious you don't even
There's
mention
actually,
it.
I think, there's two little subtle alien references in it.
Yes.
Exactly.
We don't want to spoil anything, but there are.
Nope, we're not spoiling.
Yeah. I'm just trying to throw out what's in there, just so you guys know what kind of movie we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to come out of this movie, and I definitely did, going, man, this dude loved making this film. He poured his heart and soul into this. I mean, because it took them several years to get the movie made and finished, and it was work well done. And you're going to get everything from practical effects to computer effects in this. And the computer effects are above par of Sci-Fi Channel. They're not.
Not even comparable.
No. Did an extremely good job. And of course, now James Ojala did the special effects on this, and he's worked on everything from Dead Birds back in like 2005. He's worked on some trauma films like Citizen Toxie, Poultrygeist, all the way to he's worked on Pacific Rim, Tron Legacy, X-Men Last Stand. So they had a great guy for special effects that really helped make this get off the ground. So high praise. There's no complaints for me.
Well, Pierce Rudd, he wrote, directed, and of course was a producer on this, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, this was his baby. He wrote this and he directed it. So, and you can see that in the film, in the finished product I mentioned before.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's find out. When you listen to this show, you want to find out what the Stomp rating is. Let's find out. It's Stompdown rating time. All right, collectively, out of the three of us, it was all same number all across the board. 4.5 out of 5 stomps on this movie, without question. Whether it be for nostalgic reasons, just the movie itself, this movie is absolutely amazing. I mean, am I wrong?
Yeah, it hits on all cylinders. No. Everything I wanted was in this movie. There was nothing at the end of this time where I went, I wish they'd have done this, or I wish maybe they had done that. Point. I was like, I want to watch it again. When do I get a sequel? What I need more of this. Give me back monster movies. That's what this is. Give me back what I love, and it did it. It's perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it really is. It's just not 5 stomps because we can't step on Ruben's pedestal of Alien.
Yeah.
But it's the highest I feel like we could do on this. And it's a little nostalgia driven. There's nothing wrong with that because it made me enjoy the movie even more.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there was no faults in it for me. For me, it's just, it deserved 4.5. The only reason I didn't get a 5 is because, Ruben's got his reasons for mine. So I can't compare this to something like the original Godzilla or, the original Frankenstein, something like King Kong. But man, I mean, I would even say I sat down and enjoyed this movie more than movies like Frankenstein for totally different reasons.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it just, it took me right back to being a kid again. And I enjoyed it. I mean, absolutely enjoyed it.
That
Ruben?
nailed it right there. I went right back to feeling like a kid. That is the perfect way to put that.
Yeah, and that's and truthfully, you guys know that's how I rate movies. If it has that, it gets points for nostalgia alone. All right, and like I said, I reserve my 5 for very, very special. And this is a very special movie. Do not get me wrong. Okay, it's just that I have my rating system. It may be flawed, but this is as close as you're going to get to a perfect movie for me, without giving it a perfect rating, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I think it does. Definitely.
It does to us because we've seen the movie.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, everyone else has to wait till July to see how they actually go on it. But trust us, you know what Sludge talks about. You know what I talk about. You know what era we love. If we're giving it this praise, this movie's giving you all of what you want. That's it. There's no fluff in this movie. This is what we love. It's on the screen. It's Pierce pouring his heart out, really. And I mean, I'm sure Pierce would be the first guy to go, it's not a perfect movie. Well, you guys are crazy giving it 4.5 stomps out of 5. He would probably be the one to bring us down a little bit, but it's like, no, man, you made this enjoyable.
It's everything we love. It's got everything we love about movies and what we grew up with. And even to this day, what I look for in a movie, it's got everything. I will say this, and you guys know what I'm going to say, right? What would have given it a perfect 5?
Phoebe Cates.
Oh, Phoebe Cates.
Phoebe Cates. The perfect 10 would have given it a perfect 5. Okay, so
I'm not even on this show regularly, and I know Phoebe Cates.
Yeah,
there you go.
I'll just say, to make it perfect for me, I needed like a cameo from RoboCop. That's what I.
That would have been
awesome.
Yeah.
That would have been so awesome.
Or the crabs attacking people on the Titanic. Historic film.
It didn't even have to be the Titanic. Film. If it was just a ship that looked like it out there in the beach,
it didn't. This is it's a cover up. Okay, this was a whole cover up. Titanic was not sunk by an iceberg. Crabs got it, man.
These limulus. So
I'm in.
Yeah. So guys, we'll be letting you know for sure. This movie comes out around July, where you can find it, where you can watch it, where you can buy it, because we stress buy this movie, support Pierce and his crew. They did a fantastic job for it. We are super excited for you guys to hear this interview. This interview was an absolute blast, and we hope you all enjoy it. And here you go.
Babe, you better put that down.
And welcome to the very special Crabs interview episode of the Monster Movie Stompdown. Of course, you got your host, Sludge, here, the master from Texas,
Ruben,
and our very special guest, because unfortunately Mark couldn't be here with us because he's fighting the dreaded pizza industry. We've got Charlie from Give Me Back My Action Movies and Give Me Back My Horror Movies. Charlie, say hey.
RoboCop rules. That's all I'm going to say. Mark's not here. He can't stop me. I am surrogate Mark tonight.
And, of course, the most important person of this episode is going to be the director of the movie Crabs that we're going to be interviewing, Pierce Berolzheimer. Pierce, say hi.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Man, we are glad and thankful that you decided to do this. Real quick, one of the other co-hosts or hosts from one of our other shows on our network, Pete, over at Good Beer Bad Movie Night, saw the trailer for this movie, and he shared it to a bunch of us, and it's like, we all have to watch this, and we've got to find these guys because this movie looks amazing, and it absolutely. We were all hooked immediately. I think when we first saw it, we all started sharing it on our social media pages. Wasn't long after, I think I reached out to you about a specific scene too in the movie, which we'll talk about. Because when I saw the trailer, I was like, man, that looks really familiar. And I don't know if you remember me and you talking. I was like, is this what it is? And you're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, that's so awesome. So we're super excited about this movie. We all got a chance to watch it. Again, thank you so much for that opportunity because it is amazing. We have nothing but praise for this. I have no negatives for this film at all. It was an absolute blast. But Pierce, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the movie.
Yeah, thanks. So that was quite the introduction because there's definitely flaws in the movie, but I'm glad you didn't see any of them. I'm Pierce. I'm the director of Crabs, which is coming out this summer probably July in the United States and Canada. We're already out in Australia and I think France. So if you're living in Australia or France, check it out. And yeah, the movie, I wrote it when I was 19, so long time ago. And then once I kind of got to the place in my career where I wanted to make a film, and I thought I was ready to make my first feature. We actually went into production on this other movie, and then a producer came up to me and was like, "Hey, man, if this isn't a movie that you love, don't go make this movie. Make the movie you really want to make." And so I'm like, actually, I wrote this Crabs movie that I never intended to show anybody. This is really the movie I want to make, but I thought I might need to work for 15 years before I was able to do it. Showed them the script, and they're like, "Yeah, we have no idea how to do it, but let's make this movie." So 7 years later, we're here. We are.
Man, that's awesome. So from start to finish, it took 7 years to do the film?
Yep. We shot the movie in 2015. 15, 16, and 17. We had 3 different units, but the main unit was February 2015.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll get into some of these questions because I have a plethora of questions I would love to ask because this movie has got so much in it that I love, but we don't want to keep you for hours and hours and hours because Ruben knows me and him could talk forever about stuff. Charlie knows too.
Yeah.
But my biggest question when watching it, because there's this movie, I was even telling the guys before they watched it, I said, man, this is like the greatest throwback 80s monsters film that I think I've ever seen. Like everything I liked about 80s monster movies, all in this one film. And it was great. Ruben even said the latest Godzilla King of the Monsters came out in 2019, how that was just a major throwback and homage to the 60s and 70s Godzilla films. Crabs felt like that for all 80s monster movies. So what was your biggest influence in making the movie? Was it those movies or something in particular?
Oh yeah, I mean that's huge praise because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted this to be like, the Now discs that they used to put on.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like Now for 80s monster movies.
Oh, definitely.
I wanted to do
that's nice. Yeah,
like a best of all the movies that I grew up watching and jam them all into one sort of tight little movie. I wanted to have Gremlins, and I also wanted to have, like the Alien or Velociraptors from Jurassic Park or Pumpkinhead. And then I wanted to have, the kaiju, the Power Rangers, Godzilla. I wanted, and I didn't know if I was ever going to make another movie. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to throw everything that I want to make and all the movies I ever want to make into one thing. So I tried to put in like John Hughes references and like nail the 80s vibe as much as I possibly could. Cause that was what I grew up with. And I was like, I want to add to that. I want to add, my stamp onto, that world.
Right. Well, that's full of 80s vibes. I was even telling Ruben, I was like, dude, there's even moments with Jessica, or the character Annalise, where I was like, dude, I feel like I'm watching parts of Weird Science. Like, it just gave me a weird science vibe in it. It's awesome. I'm glad that the 80s influenced you on this because, I grew up with the 80s movies as well, and so this movie just spoke to me like it's the perfect film. Like, I absolutely loved it. Ruben, you're up next, man. What you got for him?
Well, my question, he partly answered. He said he wrote it, when you were, 17? Is that what you said? When did you write that? 19, right?
19, yeah. Yep.
19, when you're 19. When you wrote it, did the plot change any as you were going along, or did it start off as something and then evolve into something else?
Yeah, it started. The original idea was just to do a found footage movie of a news crew on a beach when horseshoe crabs were attacking, and it was going to be a short film that I was just going to try to go off and shoot, but it became way too complicated to figure out. And I wasn't skilled enough to be able to handle it at the time. So I pushed it aside. And then I had the idea of a kid in a wheelchair that builds a giant mechanical monster to fight this crab on the beach. And then that was
perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the first idea. I was like, he wants to go to prom and he wants to build these mechanical legs and then uses that technology to build this giant shark that he fights this thing at the end of the movie. And it was then that I kind of brought the crabs back into that story because I knew I've always wanted to do something with horseshoe crabs because I think that they're so interesting and weird looking, and I love the idea of something that looks terrifying but isn't. actually in real life. Like they're completely, totally harmless. So I thought about the rabbit from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Like
yeah,
trying to do that where it's like this is totally a harmless creature, but it's going to start eating people. But yeah, the script changed a lot. There were in the initial draft, I wrote a role for Christopher Lloyd specifically. Like I really wanted Christopher Lloyd in the movie. There was a role, even when we storyboarded the whole movie, the storyboard artist like drew Christopher Lloyd as the character. And we talked to him, and he actually he used to, he doesn't live there anymore, but he used to live in the town where we filmed the movie. And so I thought, oh, he lives there. We'll get him without a problem. And unfortunately, like 6 months before we shot the movie, he moved out of that town back to LA, and he was out of our price range. So he read the script and was into it, but then we just couldn't afford it with our budget. So we cut his character out, but there was a whole like conspiracy theory element to it with this character that, used to work for the government and had like UFOs in his garage, and then the shark was going to be built using UFO technology. And then we scrapped that, and then we had the lead character working at a train yard, and so he was going to build the shark out of these train bits, and that fell through because we went to the location. We went to the train yard, and there's dangerous chemicals. They're like, no, we're not gonna insure you for shooting at a train yard. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that got cut in the process of making the movie. There's one scene in particular that after the prom, I really wanted to do like a Raptors in the Kitchen from Jurassic Park homage. And so the characters were going to be trapped in the auditorium, and the second stage monster were going to come in the auditorium and like stalk them through the bleachers. But anyway, that got cut due to time restraints and budget. But yeah, a lot changed from the initial. The core of the movie was the same, like the feel of it and the tone was the same throughout. Yeah. But a lot of like the details of where the characters lived and their socioeconomic status and how the relationships played out, that kind of stuff changed as we went.
Ah,
nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah. I dig it.
Charlie, what you got for him?
At first it was going to be more statement, but I guess I can turn this into a question. And you touched on a little bit where you're wanting to stay in that 80s vein of the monster movies and stuff. I also picked up during the movie that you set it at a specific time because you show it's a knockoff, obviously, but the Game Boy, the guy's playing in the police car. There's no cell phones. They're communicating through CB radios. I can answer my own question by going, I know that's deliberate, but what was your thought process on how did you decide not to put it in 2017, 18 when you were filming and decide to go, I want it to feel like it was during that time. We're paying homage, but it is in the 80s, maybe early 90s.
I really intentionally didn't want to have any modern technology in it for a couple of reasons. And the first thing is that I feel like cell phones screw up movies. I feel like it's really, really hard not to write cell phones out of a film and have it just feel like a convenience.
Yeah, it's an easy out. Out. Yeah.
Yep.
And anytime I see that done, it takes me out of it. So the lack of cell phones, like I'm not sure I will ever make a movie with a cell phone in it, just because I feel like you have to, especially a horror movie, you have to write out cell phones. And once you write them out, it's convenient, and it's weird that nobody can use their cell phone, especially today when cell service is so good everywhere that it would be so easy to do. It feels like it is such a escape from the problems or whatever is going on in the film that it makes solutions ridiculously easy to get out of. And so
why didn't you call this person? Why didn't you text this person? Oh, the killer had a jammer for some reason and I didn't have cell service. Yeah, that it doesn't work. My other thought was when I watch movies, the phones or the technology dates the movie immediately. You're like, oh, that's not now. That was 2016 when the iPhone whatever was out. But it's like the Iron Man scene where he's got the screen that flips up to a T. That was amazing for Iron Man at that point. Now it's like, dude, we're way past all that. Now it's clear phones. Yeah.
That was the creative decision behind it, beyond just like the practicality of writing a script and it being difficult to do with cell phones in it. The creative reason was that I wanted the movie to exist sort of out of time and out of place. And I felt like a Game Boy Color was a throwback enough that roughly when it exists, but it's not so grounded that it couldn't exist a little bit before that or a little bit after that. Right. And so nothing else in the movie I wanted to date it. I wanted it to be like, okay, if you remember the Game Boy Color, then you know what we're referencing, basically. Mm-hmm. And that was it. Like, if you get the reference, then you know the era of movies that this is going to be referencing. But beyond that, it's not like the characters actually exist anywhere. Like, that's one of the reasons I wanted to use the old Mustang, right? Like the 1960s Mustang.
I was going to bring that up. I noticed the choice of cars was very specific in this movie.
I wanted it to exist sort of beyond the Game Boy, which and the Game Boy was even up for debate too, because at one point I wanted it to be like you could have plucked this movie off of the Video World shelf from 1980 and never have any idea that it wasn't anything but filmed back then. And so that was the original intention. And then the Game Boy actually came about because one of the storyboard artists' friends is a pixel art designer. And so before we actually had done the creature suits and like figured out how they were actually going to physically work with a human inside of them, we had designs for the two final creatures based on the storyboard artists, their work, and me talking to him about how I imagined it looking. Anyway, so one of the storyboard artists asked his friend, who was a pixel artist, to create the two little characters, and then we animated them, and it was like, well, that's too cool to have this little reference to the original designs. And then it's like, well, this is the perfect place to put it, because if he's playing the Game Boy, then like that's foreshadowing for later. Yep. And it was just too good not to put in. And I'm like, okay, well, it can't be a Game Boy Advance because that dates it
too new. Yeah.
Clearly, but it can't be an OG Game Boy because I want the colors. So I'm like, okay, this is good.
Yeah, happy medium, a happy medium for you.
No, and it worked perfectly. That's why I was like, I wanted to bring praise to it, but somehow figure out a question of why, I guess. But I was picking up on all that, the vehicles and everything. But now all the references, like you already talked about, you tried to squeeze in Jurassic Park, even though you did get one on film that I absolutely love. Now it feels like that time frame, like Radu probably saw Jurassic Park, and he repeats that line that he learns. And I love Radu. My wife was singing that song for like 30 minutes after.
That's awesome.
So I know we'll get there, but I just have to say that now. When I know a movie is good, my wife loves watching these kind of movies with me, but she'll also be like, oh God, what are we watching? Oh, what is this? She's watching this movie going, this is amazing. Oh my God, look at all the ooey gooey. Oh, this is fantastic. Oh, they did that. That's when I know the movie is excellent, is when my wife is singing the song from the end of the movie.
Oh yeah, it's the same for my wife. My wife does not watch anything that we watch or cover on these shows. And I showed her the trailer for it, and she's like, I have to watch that. That movie looks awesome. She unfortunately hasn't got a chance to watch it yet. She was busy the night that I ended up watching it, but she's even stoked about it. And that's, Jackie, Charlie's wife, if they're wanting to see it and they're loving it, dude, it's a great film. You already know.
You nailed it. It's out of the park.
That's awesome. Thank you, guys. That's cool.
Well, since he brought up Radu, I'll go into my next question here is, how did you manage to get the cast for this? Because I'm sitting there watching it going, man, like Allie Jennings, she was in The Newer Little Woman, and then Robert Craighead, he is stuck out to me the most because I was sitting there going, man, I just watched him in something. What was it? And I watched some really bad movies. And it was Zarkor the Invader. It was I watched a movie from the 95, 96, and I was like, oh yeah, he's in that, Then you got Jessica Morris. The cast was really good. How did you get these guys?
I want to add one real quick. Dylan Snyder. My kids watch Kicking It. Yeah. And my wife immediately was like, is that the kid from Kicking It? And I was like, I had to look it up because, you know, he's definitely gotten older since he did the show. But I was like, it is. So I wanted to add him in there because that was one of the questions I wanted to ask.
Yeah, but he
was
played
about him.
Philip, right? The lead character,
Yeah.
Philip in the movie.
Yeah, he's the main character.
Yeah. So how'd you get this cast?
There's a funny story with Dylan, actually. When we filmed the prom scene, we had to get all the local kids to come and to be in the movie because we couldn't pay anybody to do it. So we like sent out all these flyers and had the school hand them out and stuff like that. And the first day that we were filming, we only had like 8 kids show up for our prom. And so we were like trying to shoot prom with 8 people. And we just had to like keep pushing them in the back to make it seem like there was more people. But then they found out that Dylan was there. And so at the same time, we were like, okay, well, maybe we'll have to pay people just a little bit to incentivize people to come the next day so we have a bigger prom scene. So we're like, okay, we'll give everybody $50 or something for the day. And so we told everybody about that. And then a bunch of people showed up and we got like, 30 people, something like that, 25 people. And nobody had found out that we were paying him. They just all found out that Dylan was in the movie. And so they showed up because of Kicking It. And so knowing that Dylan was in it actually was the only reason we actually had enough people to do a prom scene.
That's awesome.
I like cool.
Yeah. They're all high school kids and they all knew the show. So we lucked out. But the casting was, we had a great casting agent. And I had never worked with a casting agent before. And it's awesome. I mean, that process is so much fun because you give a description of what the character personality is like. And then you just, you have a conversation with the casting director about, this is kind of how I envision the character to behave. And because the lines on the page are just the lines on the page. So anybody can do that. It's really about getting the type of person for the role, right? So the casting director then sent us back a bunch of auditions for each of the characters. And some of them were incredibly easy. Like Allie Jennings, I don't think there was a single other person that we saw. Like it was her audition was the first one we got. We're like, that's Allie. That's Maddie. We're done here. She's fantastic.
Oh,
she's the first one we
phenomenal in the role.
Yeah. She was amazing. And then Bryce, who plays Hunter, the older brother, we probably had to see 35 people for that role.
Wow.
And that was just a really specific thing that I wanted, where it was like leading man qualities that was also innocent and goofy. And that is surprisingly hard to find. Like that combination of you can step up and be a serious leading man and have that action hero sort of persona where you are a formidable sort of presence, but also with a naive innocence where you are goofy and fun and you can look at the character and feel relatable instead of it being like, this is Tom Cruise and he's going to kick ass, right? And so we looked for a really long time, and then when we finally found Bryce, it was like, oh, that's, of course, we finally found it, but we tried really hard we looked for a long time before we found Bryce. But then Radu was like a Hail Mary. Originally, Radu was supposed to be about 14 in the scripts. We went to the casting director and we wanted this character that's 14, but I really didn't want Radu to exist from anywhere. Like, he's not supposed to be from anywhere. He's supposed to be an entirely, he's foreign, but from where?
There's no place in him anywhere on this planet.
He's Fez from that 70s show.
Yeah.
Don't know where he's from. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And I wanted it very specifically to be like this character you couldn't put your finger on. I didn't want anybody to be able to be like, oh, he's from Romania or wherever. So a lot of people came in and did accents, like very specific accents. And so we're like, no, this isn't working. And our casting director one day was just like, okay, I've got somebody. He's not what you are looking for, but I think he's actually the character that you want. And sent me Chase's audition. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going to change the movie just to get him in this because he is so talented. Like we'll whatever scenes we need in order to have him in this movie because he is so damn funny. And we had to completely rewrite parts of the movie because like his schedule and Robert Craighead's schedule didn't line up at all. And so we had to change the structure of the script in order to accommodate getting both Craighead and Chase in the movie. And so Robert, I knew one of the roles I really wanted somebody that was recognizable from that era. And like we looked at some of the actors from Fright Night came into audition. which would have been really cool. I mean, it's amazing that somebody from Fright Night auditioned for this movie. I mean, that
alone is awesome.
Anyway, so then Robert came in, and I'm like, oh, of course, this is perfect. So yeah, we and then Jessica, actually, I had a short list of actors that I wanted, and I don't remember the name of the movie now, but I'd seen Jessica in a recent horror movie, and was like, oh, she'd be great for this, and she was on my list. But before I even sent the list into the casting director, Jessica came in an audition. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's serendipity.
She was in Puppet Master. Oh gosh, what was Axis Termination? One of the later ones. She was in it, and she was in the Evil Bong movies.
Maybe it was Evil Bong. Maybe that was what it was. Yeah,
she was in both of those. Great actress. I mean, absolutely great cast. You definitely knocked out of the park with Chase on Radu. He is arguably I love all the characters in the movie, but Radu I just wanted him on screen. I didn't want a shot without him. He was awesome every time.
He's he and I'm probably the only one that, I don't know why, maybe because he was shirtless. He gave me that Dwight Schrute vibe from The Office.
Oh yeah.
You know, and when I saw him, I mean, that's Dwight. That's who I thought of immediately.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. My internet just cut out. I missed what you just said.
Oh,
okay. We can read it.
It's all right. Yeah, I said that he gave me, even though I'm probably the only one that you know, because I watch a lot of it. He reminded me of Dwight Schrute when I first saw him without his shirt, and I'm like, this guy kind of has the mannerism of Dwight Schrute. You know, he has an accent, but he had that vibe, and I'm like, man, I thought about him immediately. I mean, his mannerisms and things were kind of like that, and it was right up my alley. I love Dwight in The Office. So,
well, every time he's on screen, that's what we're focusing on.
Yeah,
like he's stealing the scene from a lot of people.
Yeah,
and again, not trying to give away too much, but there's the whole alleyway scene with him in the crowd. Oh. I was in tears.
Yeah,
my wife's laughing to death on it, and I'm just like, this is fantastic. I love this guy. And every time he comes back on screen, he does something else where I'm like, oh my God, that was fantastic. I love this. And somehow he gets a sword. And I'm just so happy as the movie kept going.
I went around all day yesterday around the house because I work from home and my wife does too. And I kept going, everybody has a ninja sword. She's like, what are you talking about? Everybody's got a ninja sword. I'm like, you got to watch this movie. It's so good.
I should have put blue face paint on tonight. I should have done the crab.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
I want to get a Radu action figure with the crab.
There you go.
Oh, I would pay all kinds of money for that.
Same thing. Same here. Yeah.
Yeah. That a lot of his lines, especially that alleyway scene, were all improv too.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Wow. On the moment he was coming up with all that, and on our Blu-ray, and I think it'll be on iTunes and stuff like that when we release. There's an entire commentary of the whole movie of Radu doing a commentary that is
yes.
Oh my God.
That is brilliant
right there. That's it. I'm sold right here. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
We're gonna put a sticker on the back of the box that, like, if you know, and it's gonna say like commentary by Radu. But we also have like 5 extra minutes of improv that we unfortunately had to cut from that scene that is there. It is just funny. I mean, like trying to trim that down was so hard because everything in his mouth was gold.
Yeah.
And even the final, the song at the credits, I knew I wanted to have him sing the song because Chase is actually a musician. He was on Alter Ego, the show that was on Fox recently.
Okay.
He's a great musician. He does a one-man show where he plays like 6 different people and plays guitar 6 different ways. I mean, he's an incredible musician. But so all of the end credit, I just went to Chase. I'm like, hey man, can you write this song? He's like, yeah, give me a week. That's what he sent me back as is. He played all of the music on it, all of his original lyrics. Like, that's just him. And I gave him 2 guardrails. I'm like, no pop culture, so just can't date us, and don't get us canceled.
Right. Yeah.
Let him go. And that's what we came up with, which is just amazing.
Oh, it was
I want to say, though, I know me and Ruben said we're sold and we're in. We were buying the Blu-ray regardless.
Oh, yeah,
so,
that is true.
Now you've just added the cherry on top that I might buy 5 of them. I'm going to give them out as gifts because I want everyone to experience Radu and giant crabs. I mean, it's fantastic.
It was definitely brilliant. Ruben, you're up next for a question, man.
Yeah. Well, the first question kind of when you wrote it, but my question is there a scene that you had to fight for to keep in a movie that maybe everybody else wanted to cut, but you said no, we need it in there. There may not be, but I'm guessing maybe there is.
No, there's. Well, it's interesting. So most movies, I don't think directors typically on most movies don't have as much creative control as I had on this, and I basically had complete, total creative control, potentially to the detriment of the movie, but. I really got to keep everything that I personally wanted, but I did do test screenings, and I talked to my producers, and there was a couple jokes on the day, like when Philip and Maddie are rolling, they're Maddie's wheeling Philip around the barn, and he's like, "Can you get the keys out of my backpack?" And she's like, "You want them? Stand up and get them." He's like, "Oh, that's not cool." On the day, the producers were like, "Oh no, we can't do that. We're not doing any more takes."
Yeah.
That's not a joke you can make. And I'm like, but they're best friends. Like that's the type of stuff you do with your best friend. Nothing's off limits. Like I wanted to have Philip not be precious. Like he wasn't delicate.
Yeah. He wasn't coddled.
Like the kid from Silver Bullet.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
And so that felt important to me to really quickly like kick that under the rug and be like, we're not gonna, pussyfoot around the fact that Philip's in a wheelchair. We're gonna treat him like every character's gonna treat everybody else the same in this movie. Yeah. And then
that's great.
The other joke that the producers really didn't like on the test screening was really didn't like. I got emails being like, please remove this joke weeks after.
I'm guessing I know which one. Let's see which one it is.
It's not what you think, so when he's putting on I'm curious, it'd be cool if you got this, but when he's putting on the legs for the first time in the barn, the brother's helping him strap on the middle waist piece, and he goes, "Hunter, that's not my leg."
Yeah.
Brother touching brother penis joke.
Yeah.
So much I got multiple emails being like, "Hey, you got to cut that scene."
But that's what brothers would do.
Yeah, way worse than that. Yeah.
Even if he wasn't even close to it, the joke would be even better. Like strapping the ankle on, going, "That's not my ankle." That's even funnier, But that's brothers busting each other's balls.
That's how I felt. I was like, "It's funny."
And
so anyway,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the same with the joke with Maddie and Philip in the wheelchair. I was telling either Mark or my wife about it. Those two. Because of that joke alone, I already felt like they had an extremely tight connection. Like it made me feel like they really were best friends. And I don't think if you didn't have that joke, I don't think it would have worked that way. I mean, it wouldn't have been as good. That helped cement that. So
it puts everybody at ease. Like I think it puts the audience more at ease with their relationship. All together. In other words, it solidified that it wasn't just like, "Oh, I feel sorry for him," or thing like that. This was a real friendship, and that joke kind of solidified it for I think.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, that was the intention. Yeah. I wanted to. I haven't seen a lot of movies that have people in wheelchairs as the protagonist, and so I wanted to not only put their mind at ease as friends and like establish that quickly, but also put the audience.
Exactly. Yeah,
we're going to recognize that this is a movie that has a non-traditional protagonist, and have you not worried that we're gonna treat this like a movie that, like, I never wanted Philip to feel like the disability was the thing that was interesting about him, right?
Right.
Another aspect of the character. Like it's just
right.
It's just a part of his character, not the defining aspect of it. And like even the scene when he fails with the legs and he can't walk and he falls down. My intention the whole time with that scene was not that he's upset that he can't walk, that he's upset because he failed with his technology.
Yep. Right.
Yeah.
He failed with the mental goal that he had in mind. He couldn't accomplish that goal. And then the only reason that he wanted to walk at all was that he wanted to dance with her. So it was more of like an external thing. It wasn't necessarily that he needed it. It was like he wanted to.
It was a goal. Yeah, it was a goal. Yeah, it was a goal of his. Yeah,
absolutely. I just like how those are the things they were upset about, but totally cool with the priest that flows the finger.
Yeah.
And it keeps. Did anyone else notice though that he does it, and then if you look hard in the background, he's still doing it from way back.
Yes.
I couldn't take my eyes off of it. He stood there with his middle finger up, and I'm like, he's still going. I love this.
That was the one
way down the street.
The one
All the
moment
way.
my wife walked in the room when I was watching the movie was that scene, and she started laughing. She's like, "Is he still back there flipping them off?" I was like, "Yeah, that's it." Yeah.
I'm so glad I wasn't the only one that kept focused on that, because I was like, the joke kept going, and it wasn't like in your face, like, look what we did. It was, oh God, is he still doing it? That's how I was. I was like, please tell me there's still a middle finger flying. And we get it, full circle later in the movie too, which is even better.
Yeah.
You set something up and you finish it later. And I did like that a lot in this movie too.
Cool. Yeah. I'm glad you caught that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I loved it.
And the thing is, it wasn't done in a way that was, how can I say, it was a joke. It was more. It was a joke. It wasn't done with any malice. It was done, and I caught that. I'm like, this is just a big, it's a joke, and there was no malice in it. I thought it was great. I thought it was funny.
I really didn't want there to be any malice in the whole movie, honestly.
There isn't. Yeah, there's not. I mean, there's nothing on there that's forced or that I felt like you were trying to jam something down my throat or nothing. It flowed so good. I really liked it. Yeah.
Charlie, you got another question for him?
Equal opportunity destruction.
There you go.
That's
that should be the tagline at the bottom of the DVD case.
Yeah.
Equal opportunity destruction. I just wanted to talk a little bit. We've talked a lot about story structure and stuff, but the special effects guys, and I'm gonna mess up his name.
Jim Ojala.
Jim Ojala. I follow him on Instagram now because when we started searching for everyone involved in this movie, like Sludge is sending me like your info, and I'm like, well, I found the special effects guy. It's Ojala, and I found him over here. I've seen the pictures. Was that someone you've worked with before? Was it a first time work with? What was like the behind the scenes of the special effects? Because it's an ooey gooey movie with blue blood, and I love it to death. I really do.
Jim was the catalyst for getting the movie off the ground. Actually, because when I came to the producers with the script, they're like, this sounds great. We're on board to do this, but we have never worked with effects before. We've never done an effects heavy movie. And we don't know how to do that. So we don't know how to make that work. So you got to kind of figure it out. And then we'll get into actually trying to make the movie. And so I'm like, oh God, I don't know how to do it. So I was in the process of like, reaching out to random people, and it wasn't getting anywhere. And then I was living in New York City at the time, and I went to the midnight showing of Big Ass Spider with one of my buddies.
Oh, another great movie.
It's a great movie. It's so much fun. I love that movie. So I've been super excited to see that movie. My buddy and I went to the bar, and then we went to see that at midnight. And the only two other people at the screening were Lloyd Kaufman and his wife. It was just the four of us. And so after the film, I go up to Lloyd Kaufman. I'm like, hey, I'm a big fan of your work. I'm trying to get this movie off the ground. Do you have, can I pick your brain for 15 minutes just about trying to get the creatures? And he's like, oh, why don't you come down to Troma Studios? He gave me an entire day of his time. I sent him my script. He gave me script notes. And then he put me in touch with Jim Ojala, who did all the effects for Poultrygeist back at Troma. So
he did Citizen Toxie too, didn't he? Didn't he do the fourth Toxie figure? Yeah.
Yeah, so Jim got his start working for Lloyd. And so originally we were going to try to get Lloyd out for a cameo, but last minute flights from New York to California are like, for an indie film, just can't do it.
Not in the budget. Yeah.
Not in the budget, especially just for a cameo. But I would have loved to have had Lloyd be in the movie. But he's like, yeah, fly me out. So Lloyd Kaufman is the reason that this movie exists, really, in the state that it does, and how we got Jim. And then once we got Jim, it was basically like, typically when you're a creature effects person, you do one little part of a movie. It's like you do the gory scene for this part, and then somebody else does this part over here. But he's like, I have never worked in a movie where I get to do little puppets, full suits, and then a kaiju fight all in the same project. And so this was like this massive project for them that they got to work on all sorts of different types of, I mean, every type of effect that you could imagine. And he's like, all right, we'll make it work. Like whatever the budget is, we'll figure out how to do it. And then it was a process of like 6 to 9 months of, I was living in New York and he was living in LA. And, we had a artist do the designs for the creatures. And then we would send photos and ideas back and forth as he was building them. And so on the Blu-ray and iTunes and stuff, the behind the scenes features, we have like, I included all of the test footage for leading up to like as production was happening.
God bless you, sir. God bless you.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that
so
stuff.
awesome.
Super cool.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole behind the scenes thing of the green screen fight too, like how we shot the green screen fight, and because we shot that a year later, and that was a whole other process. But yeah, and then it was all based on the script. So like there's one shot in the movie. This is, of all the things that I'm disappointed with in the film, it's that there's only one shot in the whole movie where we have all 3 suits in the scene. And we built 3 Limulus suits, the second stage monsters, specifically because I had a scene where they all, attacked them in the auditorium, and we needed it to triangulate and cut off exits and stuff. And then when we cut that scene, the only time we could get all 3 of them in one shot was when they're attacking this pile of dead bodies on the street. And so we had these suits, but we couldn't use them all at the same time, and that was a bummer.
Oh,
especially
I love that.
Top notch in this.
Yeah.
Oh, the fact you're highlighting it, but where it goes from small to where seeing the trailer, we kind of knows it gets bigger, but then the actual transformation when it happens, you're like, oh my God, this is fantastic. And then to see that full person suit and then a bunch of them running around the street, I'm just like, this is gold. I love every second of this.
And I love that you guys, because obviously you go from, a lot of practical effects and then some CG work in it. I was so happy when it came to the kaiju fight at the end that you went pretty heavy practical. I mean, you got the green screen back and stuff, but they're men in suits. And, most of the movies that we review on our show are men in suit films. So I absolutely love that you guys went that route instead of saying, okay, well, we can make the shark CGI or make the queen crab CGI. You didn't do that. You did it all practical and then CG where you needed to. That was, I think, a phenomenal choice because it highlighted
gives the
movie
film that feel. It gives that movie that feel that us as fans are looking for anyway. Fans of that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I grew up watching Power Rangers, and then they're still going when my son was young enough to really still be into them. So, I'm telling him about the first season of Power Rangers. We're now watching like Turbo and Dino and Ultra Flash, whatever. And I'm watching this movie going, oh my God, I love this. As someone that loved Godzilla movies, Power Ranger movies. I mean, all I added was the little soup monsters being like the putties at the bottom and they had to fight everyone else that's just watching the fight. But I get budget restraints, but I'm sure your ideas were like, what if we did this? And they're like, we don't have money for that. Just stop it. Stop killing yourself. Just let's work with what we got here.
That was definitely part of it. I mean, I wish that we could have done exactly that. Like there was a whole Radu sword fight scene at the end of the movie. Like when they're in the trailer, when Radu he's fighting the Limulus in the trailer, that originally was like a massive samurai sword fight that I wanted to shoot like an old Kurosawa film and do.
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. But we had to cut it because time and budget, and so we did the little shadow puppets inside the trailer.
Yeah. Which I feel like really got it across. Though when you watch these movies, you expect a certain level of they're gonna have to like cut the camera away or do this. To give us that shadow fight was even better. I feel because you get that line he drops. I don't want to spoil the line. Yeah, he drops that perfect line, and then it pans out to the outside the trailer and the shadow fight. I was like, this. I love this. Every bit of it. That scene was perfect.
Oh, dude. Yeah. It was that scene. It was, and I guess I'm going to kind of go with what me and you first talked about when we first started talking about this movie. It reminded me of a scene from Humanoids from the Deep. And that is one of my favorite films. I love that film. I don't know how many times I've explained the scene to my wife, and she's never seen it, where the humanoids in this film attack this like festival that they got going on in town. And they start going after the women, and then everyone's freaking out, but then all of a sudden they realize we're a bunch of rednecks, and they start grabbing like 2x4s, and then they can and just start beating the crap out of these things. That scene with Radu reminded me of that, and I loved that. Because there's the opening sequence in the movie, the beach there. Let's get it from you since you're here. Is that an immediate throwback to that movie?
Oh, it was very specifically that movie, because this is really wild. But that movie was filmed in the town that we shot crabs, and not only that, but like there is a shot of, it's called Dolphin Isle. It's one of the drone shots that goes over Dolphin Isle, and that was a set that was built specifically for Humanoids of the Deep. And then turned into this community that they just kept the island there, and then a bunch of people live on it now. But it's
wow.
And it's like 100 yards down from where the cabin was, where the trailers were, the characters live in with the barn. Yeah. You can look at Dolphin Isle, which is the set that they built for Humanoids of the Deep. So
that's even better. That's amazing.
That's so awesome. I remember watching the trailer, and when I first reached out to you, I was just like, dude, that looks like the set from Humanoids from the Deep. And you were like, it is. I was like, that is awesome. That is the coolest thing ever. Because I'm a big Corman fan. I don't think there's a movie of his I don't like.
Yeah.
We even do, in our show, we do a trivia thing, and I actually lost. So we pick a bad movie for the loser to watch. And last night, Ruben's like, I'm going to pick a Corman film for you to watch. I'm like, all right, like, whatever you want. And he's like, no, never mind.
And I immediately changed my mind. Yeah, I said, nope, never mind. I'm not going to do that.
So...
Well, cool. We gotta start doing that in envelopes so people can't back out of it. You have to let him watch the movie you pick, and then it's like, oh, I'm gonna love this one.
Yeah. Well, I love so many B films.
Charlie, I found out no matter what I throw out, I'm trying to torture him with winning, and I can't torture him. Can't do it.
That doesn't work. So.
Not at all.
All right. Well, Pierce, this is my last question, and because I'm always interested to know what the biggest obstacle is. We did an interview with the guys who did Witch House, and I asked them kind of the same thing. What was the biggest obstacle you had to overcome or you were faced with when making this movie?
This actually kind of goes to the kaiju stuff at the end, but the biggest obstacle I faced was inexperience. Like not knowing what I was doing, honestly, because I'm self-taught. I didn't really go to film school. I'm the type of person where, like, if I see somebody else do it, I'm like, oh, I can figure that out. I can make that happen. So I just had it in my brain that I could make this movie work, no matter what our budget was. I'm like, we'll figure it out. Like, even if it looks bad, we'll be able to tell the story that I want to tell, and we'll figure out how to do it. And one of the hardest part of the whole movie was definitely the final fight scene. And part of that was that the cinematographer we got for the main unit for the rest of the movie did such a good job. Like the movie and the art director, like they made the movie look so good that we were like, oh shit, now we have to make the rest of the movie look that good. And so we had to hit a certain level with everything else that kind of prevented us from doing it as cheaply and sort of sketchily as we wanted to. So the final fight was originally going to be on a miniature set. Like I wanted to really do it exactly like Power Rangers or like 1950s Godzilla, or even like Godzilla 2000. Like I really wanted to have a guy in a suit fight on a miniature set and destroy the town, and then do cut-ins of like the townsfolk getting picked up by giant claws and close-ups, and then like a little fake little dog getting eaten by like I really had interaction with the town. But when I started pricing out miniature sets, they are insanely expensive, like $100,000 plus at bare minimum for a legitimate miniature set. And then it was like way out of our price range. So when I cut that idea out, I was like, okay, well, maybe stop motion animation. Maybe I'll make it like a Harry Harryhausen. And then that got nixed immediately too, because that was also even more expensive. Like that's a crazy thing to do. So then we settled on doing actual drone shots of the location, the physical location in the town where it happens, and then stitching those together to create a 360-degree background. And then each of the shots were labeled like north, east, south, or west. And then we had different backgrounds depending on the angle. And then like where the sun was, there's one shot that no one is ever going to notice has as much detail in it and time put into it that it does. But it's when we filmed the interior of the cockpit, we had a light. So we knew that the shark's head was going to get like knocked up and the sun was going to shine in because they were looking west, and the sun was going to shine in on this part of the interior to light the queen in the same way because she's going to be right there. And then we also had to put the sun in the background in the same spot and have that whole track at the same time. So there's 3 different layers of lighting that were done to just get this one like 2-second shot. So I tried to sell it as much as we could, and I think I got a little bit too in the weeds with trying to sell it. So so that took a really long time. But the whole final fight actually took about 3 years. And part of that was that I didn't know what I was doing. So once we had collected all the footage, we sent it to a company in Vietnam to do the VFX work, because that was the only place we could afford to do 380 shots. But one of the things, the way that we shot it, again, this is like 101 level that I should have known. But we shot it in 300 frames per second because I knew I wanted to get the size of the monsters to feel big in their movements. Like one of the things that Power Rangers and even old Godzilla movies don't do is that the monsters move at real time. Like they're moving like they're a person in a suit, not like they're this gigantic, mountain-sized creature. And the new Godzilla films and like Pacific Rim do a good job of making the creatures move slowly because of their size. But then when the camera's close up, they move quickly because you're covering a shorter space and a longer distance. So I wanted to try to mess with time to give it a little edge over the old movies, like use new techniques while filming it in the same way that old movies were filmed. But anyway, we also screwed up our tracking markers. So when we started doing the VFX work, artists had to, by hand, cut out each of the characters from every frame, 300 frames per second for 300 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
We weren't even done editing it. And so we ended up probably doing 2 times as much work. And then artists were being trained on the film. And so we would have a bunch of artists come in and work on it for 6 months. And then they would move on and do other things. And a new batch of artists would come in and they wouldn't understand how their structure in their computer worked. And so they'd have to start all over again. So there was this, because I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't have anybody to tell me how to do it, it was a constant learning process of how to actually put together a scene like this on a budget. And that was by far continuing, like keeping the motivation up to actually get it done. And then being committed to not cutting corners and being like, no, it can't just be done. Like it needs to be done and be as good as the rest of the movie. That was definitely the hardest part.
Man,
anybody else fascinated by the fact that the miniature work and the way the stop motion is more expensive now than what we're doing now compared to back then?
Yeah, that's
like
crazy.
How much what we do now would have cost them, if they had that any type of technology, would have been millions of dollars to them. Now we're looking at stuff going, I can't afford to do miniatures. I have to do CGI. So a lot of the people that look like, oh, the CGI, I hate when they do CGI. Why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? Budget. Because now that's us more expensive than someone on a computer that can manipulate everything. Because if you mess up a take on a miniature set, you got to rebuild that miniature set or it stays.
That's crazy.
It's just wild to think about that. We're having a conversation where that was the more expensive option.
Yeah. When you go back
and those guys that did it they did it because that's all they could afford to do. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And going right off that, like, we do have CGI crabs in the movie. Like the scene where they're in the alleyway and it comes up and it's like about to touch her hand.
Yeah.
We tried to do that practically, but the ease of getting emotion out of something practically, unless you're, Jurassic World and you're, using multi-million dollar animatronics, getting intimate performances out of a silicon puppet is really hard. And so to sell the emotion of it, you either have to use sound and like the sounds the monsters are making, or you have to use CGI so you can get the intimate sort of minute movements through the animation. And that's something that, like, I know people love. I'm the first one to, love practical effects. Like, practical effects sell it in a way that digital effects just don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But from a storytelling point of view and like on my next movie, the value of being able to have very minute detail by using CGI and like by creating personality in the monsters by being able to do it in a computer, and that it looks as good as it does for how much it costs, is like, oh man, if I went back, I would have probably cut 2.5 years off of this project by doing mostly CGI. And it doesn't cost that much. I mean, that scene really didn't cost all that much. And we were able to create a model in the computer and then take 360-degree photos of the actual prop, the puppet, and put those directly on the model so that the texture of the CGI was the same texture as the puppet. So you can tell it's CGI because it moves differently, but the actual feeling of it, I wanted to keep almost indistinguishable. And if I had known that would have worked, because I had it in my head, like, CGI is way out of our budget, but it's not. CGI is like way actually more in our budget than doing it practically. And if I had known that, there would have been way more CGI in the film.
And that's the particular scene you're talking about. It doesn't take you out of it. It's not like, oh crap, I know this one's CG. Like, it's not like the Sci-Fi Channel movies, that they pump out where the crocodile comes jumping out and it's basically pixelated, but this one, that little crab, and you're right, the amount of emotion and subtle movement, you're not going to get that out of, like you said, just a static puppet or even one that somewhat articulates. There's some true movement involved in that, but it doesn't take me out, because then I get to laugh my butt off when all the crabs are in the bar. And I adore that entire scene too, because it's gory and funny and throws back to Gremlins, Ghoulies, Critters, the whole 9 yards. And I don't, it's fine. Do a CG one with the touching moment and then give me ooey gooey silicone puppets. And I want a puppet. So whoever I got to talk to, I want a horseshoe crab puppet. So just putting that out there.
Like I said,
but we got to keep them on deck for crabs too.
Oh yes, I would. I would love that to happen.
In the the famous lines of Mel Brooks, merchandising. Come on, man, we gotta get some merchandise out for crabs. I need a Radu and a silicone, just like the ones we used to get from Pizza Hut, the Gizmo and those hand puppets we used to get.
Yeah.
I want the crab. I want the little crab that I can take around with me.
I mean, and the special effects, you said it earlier, it blends so well when you use the CG versus the puppets versus the suits. That y'all did an outstanding job. On the special effects for this. So honestly, like, I don't have another question, because, like, Charlie, you kind of went right into bringing it up with the special effects again. Did such a phenomenal job. Do you guys have anything else for Pierce?
Only that. Why couldn't you get Phoebe Cates?
Oh, that would have been good.
That's it. I mentioned it on the show that we recorded and released today. I'm like, the only thing that would have made this perfect, even though she's just, she's too high dollar for all of y'all, for me, is Phoebe Cates. Like the scene her that was slipped in
Ruben's
there. Even a cameo, who's driving by in a car or something.
Well, Pierce, man, Charlie was going to say something.
No. I was going to pick on Ruben. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, man, thank you so much for doing this. We are definitely going to be hyping this movie up because everybody needs to see it. It is an absolute blast of a movie. There was not a moment I did not enjoy myself in this film. It was so good. I've done nothing but brag about it for days since I've watched it. Let people know, man. Plug this movie. Let people know where they can find out about it. When's it coming out so they can see it? Just anything you can throw at us about this movie.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you guys. I mean, you've been so supportive since we've been talking. It's been awesome, and I love that you guys are thrilled about it, because part of wanting to make this movie was, the only people that saw this movie as I was making it were like my mom and my girlfriend, and they don't have the language of the references because they haven't seen those movies that I love too, right? So when I got to show it and share it with people that love the same type of stuff that I do, it's such a thrill that you see it. Like, I feel like you guys all know exactly what my intention was, and you're the people I made the movie for. So I really appreciate your kind words.
Oh man, we appreciate you making this movie, and we've got lots of friends that we know that are going to love it. Absolutely love it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good because it's coming out soon. It's middle of July is what we're aiming for. We're self-distributing the movie in the U.S. Check us out, Crabs Movie on Instagram and Facebook. Don't go to our Twitter because we don't have the login information and it's been not updated since 2015. So
okay,
it happens.
Check out me. I'm on Twitter. It's at PI Berolz, BEROLZ, PIBEROLZ. But yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Crabs Movie.
Sweet,
yeah. Which we'll share it all on our stuff too.
Absolutely,
and we have already. So if you go on to Monster Movie Stompdowns or Give Me Back My Horror Movies, we've all shared it. So we've already been promoting pretty heavily.
Super stoked. So what's in the plans for you next? Are you doing another monster movie or?
Yeah, I have ideas for Crabs 2 and 3. I'd love to.
Yes, if you do a Kickstarter, we know a lot of people that'll throw money your way.
Huh?
So if you do a Kickstarter for those, we know a lot of people will throw money your way, including right here.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, to Crabs 2 and 3 would be really fun. I'd want to go way different, totally. Yeah, I won't spoil anything, but
don't spoil nothing.
No.
I have a Radu spinoff movie that I want to do.
There you go.
That one's never going to get made because that's just kind of from when Radu leaves, when you stop seeing Radu again to when you see Radu again. I wanted to do like a after hours story with Radu just going through the town and interacting with local townsfolk, and have it almost have nothing to do with Crabs at all.
Okay.
Like a little short film that we
I'm just gonna throw this out. Web series. Come on, there's no limitations. Things don't have to go to theater. There's YouTube. There's all kinds of things you could do. Little 15-minute episodes. I'd watch every one of them with Radu.
There's no question. I absolutely would. I could almost see Radu
movie I think that is actually likely to happen. I've got a whole bunch of ideas. There's a medieval action movie I really want to make. But the one cool. The way I pitched that one is like it's like The Raid with swords or John Wick with swords. I really wanted to focus on it.
You had to be medieval in action, sir. That's all I needed to hear.
But the movie that I actually think is probably gonna happen is it's like Best in Show, the mockumentary about or This Is Spinal Tap, but it's Steve Irwin versus David Attenborough. And Jace, who plays Radu, is going to play David Attenborough's character, and his brother is going to play Steve Irwin.
That would be brilliant. That
already sounds brilliant. Interesting.
It will be 99% improv.
It would have to be. You can't write that.
Yeah, super cheap mockumentary style. And I love the idea of having like this one character want to show nature documentary, because I got my start working in nature documentaries. That's like how I got into making movies. And so there's a whole world about the behind the scenes of nature documentaries, but
I can imagine so. Yeah.
The idea of like one person who thinks the way to share nature is like grab it by the tail and look at all the teeth. And then the other guy who is like the grandeur and beauty of nature, and they're competing for ratings, and they have this like this Step Brothers style rivalry.
Oh, that would be
all improv with Chase and his brother playing the two. Yeah,
we're in.
Yep,
Listen,
sold
whatever
already.
You want to do, whatever your name's attached to, we're watching.
Yep, guaranteed.
Yeah,
thank you.
So all right, Pierce, man. Again, thank you so much for doing this, and for those who are listening, hopefully you've enjoyed this, and please go check out Crabs. Well, it's just called Crabs. I'm about to say Crabs movie. Just check out Crabs. It's coming out in July. We promise you are going to absolutely love this. If you listen to any show on the Give Me Back My Podcast Network, you're going to be a true fan of this movie. You heard it here. So, again, Pierce, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Pierce.
Thanks.
Awesome. All right, there you go, guys. So we gave you our quick review of this movie. You got to hear from Pierce's mouth what all went into this movie. We discussed how great this movie is, what he's got coming out in the future, or at least what he's hoping to work towards. So when you get a chance, go see this movie. Share this episode, just so not for us, but for Pierce. Get this out there so people can hear the interview with him, because they deserve it. This movie is absolutely phenomenal. Thank you all again so much for listening to this. This is Sludge.
Ruben.
Support independent filmmakers. This is Charlie.
All right.
Y'all have a good night.
Come on, you think? You want to live forever?
Now what?
But no matter what happens, Godzilla will
You guys run a great show and ask great questions, and it's entertaining and fun. I've done enough of these podcasts. This is like the top one. This has been awesome.
All right. Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, all right. That's what I like to hear.
That is
Tell
going in
Mark I was sitting in his spot for that.
Yeah,
That's right.